Welcome to the Early Education Conversation, where we explore the transformative power of early learning through conversations with educators, thought leaders, and members of our community. In this episode, we are joined by Erin Smeltzer, President and CEO of the Children's Forum.
When I started thinking about doing a podcast, you were the first person I talked. You popped in my mind like immediately. And I think it's because I have felt this like weird kindred spirit thing with you. And I've also felt like I have watched you grow from baby to who you are. And it's the strangest thing.
Yes, definitely have grown up in Florida system, that's for sure.
Yeah, like I remember you being at the Office of Early Learning and talking so much about quality, but then now fast forward, and it's only been a few years, Erin. It hasn't been long.
I know. Yeah. I started at the Office of Early Learning in 2014. So we're at, what is it, year 11 now from
Yes.
that, not in the field, obviously, but year 11 from I think when we met.
Yeah. But if you think about, like, I think about you often, and I think about you often because I think about the fact that we often say that early learning and changes in early learning crawls, and it doesn't. Because if you think about in 11 years,
Yeah.
what your wisdom and your guidance has accomplished, it has been an incredible space. And so, I know they talk about Dave Lawrence, right, as the grandfather of early learning, and I totally, truly believe that. You're not a grandma. So we're gonna have to we're gonna have to adjust our thinking a little bit. And but I really think that you are a force behind early learning. And really excited to have you on our podcast to talk about early learning. So I always start with, what does early learning mean to you?
Well, first, thank you for that beautiful overview. But it is definitely our wisdom and our knowledge. You've been there since day one, so right back at you. I actually had a conversation with somebody about you this week, and I stopped and put my hands on my heart, which is like my universal signal for someone that I just adore. So right back at you.
Thank
Um,
you.
so ask me the question one more time because I was Aruna gushing.
What does early learning mean to you?
So early learning is personal to me. I always say that, there may be people who love it as much as me, but no one loves it more than me. And little background, I was the second child to a single mom with two very young children under the age of two. Eventually kind of grew up in a little bit of crazy. My dad down the road went to federal prison for being a drug dealer. And so I look back at the journey of where I am, and it was that incredible network of support that I had in my youngest years that really got me here. And so to me, early learning is personal. It's something that every child should get and deserves, and it really changes the trajectory of humans. I'm notoriously the nerdy person going, oh, they should have had some high quality early learning. They wouldn't be acting like that. So, to me, I see it as really it's the game changer, and it just depends on if you have access to it or not.
Yeah. I think about your story and I think about your walk to early learning, and you think about so many children that we serve who may be in similar situations or situations that mirror those types of things, right? And, what do you think was the thing that moved your trajectory out of that space into the space you're in now? Like, how did you get there? Like, if you're talking to a young one and they're thinking about, I've got so many things stacked against me. How do you get there?
Personally, I'm a person of faith, so my answer to that would be saying yes. When you pray hard prayers and you get an answer, you say yes to them. On a second version of that, I really like not being the smartest person in the room. And so, my three advice pieces I've
Oh,
given
you are, Erin.
there's always somebody teaching me something though, which I absolutely love. My three pieces of advice have always been plunge the toilets. Don't be above anything. If the toilets need plunging, plunge the toilets. The
Mhm.
second is to make your cell phone powerful, make friends, and make your network huge. So when you don't know the answer, you're a phone call away from it. And the third is that you're never the smartest person in the room. There's always somebody who can teach you something. And so I was really blessed to get to be surrounded by incredibly smart people, you being one of them, Maruna, who would sit in a room with me and tell me when ideas were good or when they were bad. but I also really try to find people who would build my knowledge, but also build my passion because our why is huge and there are babies at stake. You'll hear me say that all the time. There are babies at stake. It doesn't matter how hard the day is, there are babies at stake. And I think growing a network of people who are like-minded in that space has helped me do the hard things along the way. But every step has just been taking every single moment and just absorbing everything I could from it and learning everything I could in that moment and not trying to get to the next best thing. I just really wanted to learn every single role as much as possible and just was really blessed to have people who poured into me every single step. And then when the next scary thing said, "Hey, do you want to come here next?" I prayed about it, and if the answer was yes, I said yes. So that's how I think that's pretty much how I got here.
Yeah. So, I think of it, I mean, a lot of your work, even when you were at the Office of Early Learning, maybe in the background of everything, has always been about advocating for children. And I think that's something that always showed up for me with when I look at you, is that advocacy for children. We should tell the audience that I actually was in Erin's fellowship for advocacy. And I think, and I've done other fellowships before, but I have to say that what resonated with me with that fellowship throughout that entire time was how real things seemed, right? And how accessible it seemed. And so, living in the space of early learning and trying to figure out advocacy, how does or how could we bring advocacy to everyone to understand the way you've put it to us, which is really tangible and which is really accessible. I mean, I think about the water bottle and I think about the chair, and no one is going to know what I'm talking about. But when you go to Erin's fellowship, you will know. It's like when you know, you know. And but all of those things, like how can we do that in a larger scale for people to understand that we're all advocates for children?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously there's a lot of training that comes along with that and a lot of experience, but I think the ultimate thing we have to learn as a field is we have to be ready to get out of our own way. And so the first step is just really being in a space where you don't care who gets the credit. You don't care whose name goes on, the bill. You don't care who gets the applause at the end of the day because there's babies at stake. And so I think once you get into that space, if we can get us all to that space where it's like, how do we get on the same page for the same common mission? There's a great unity that can come with a lot of power. And then the words don't matter as much. And then the right people don't matter as much if we're all kind of moving in the right direction. And so I think I remember being a director and being on a rule workshop and thinking, they don't care what I say. Like, why do I even put my voice in here? I'm not going to make a difference. And then on the flip side of that, I got to watch it from the department side and thought, wow, like I'm actually listening to these people. And the more people that talk, the more we change the rules. So that's actually not true. And I think first we find our why, and then we have to realize that we are powerful, that our voices do matter, but we matter in the sense of, what can we get done for kids? What do we get done to get that game changer available for every child in Florida or in the nation? In the world, hopefully by the time I retire. And so, you have to kind of get to that space where you don't believe the stories that your voice doesn't matter or that, one phone call is not going to make a difference or one email is not going to make a difference. And then we just learn to do the dance. That's the easy part. Once you get the passion and you get the confidence to believe that your voice matters and that what you're saying is actually going to be listened to, and some days it may not. I'm not going to lie. There may be days where you're like, I don't know why we do this, and that's going to happen. But for the most part, then that's when the why takes over. But if you can get those two buckets full, then it's just a matter of learning the policy and the strategy. And
Yeah.
that actually is complicated, but once you get it down, it does make a lot of sense. And like you said, it's successful, and you're like, how did I not know this? But we just really need to make sure that people get those first two buckets filled, and then we'll move into the how.
Yeah. And I wonder if you find this to be true because we did a small fellowship as well with childcare providers. And one of the recurring thought that came up was that there's a lot of gatekeeping in advocacy, right? No one teaches you how to do this. And if no one teaches you how to do this, how do you know how do you do this, right? I'm taking a class right now called epistemology, and it's, that art of knowing, that science of knowing what you know, knowing how you know what you know. And I was thinking about that and wondering, do you think there's gatekeeping in early learning? Do you think that that's something that's actually real, or is it the thing that we are doing to ourselves, which is stopping us from doing the work we should be doing?
I think it's a little bit of all of that. And I want to say this, sometimes gatekeeping there is very negative gatekeeping, but there's also gatekeeping to the extent of the mission is so precious to people who are in the space that they want to make sure that the voices look right, that they look succinct. And so sometimes I think there is gatekeeping from a positive stance too, that if we've really worked hard on something and we've already gotten all of the feedback from the field, we know that this is a direction we want to go in, and there may be somebody who doesn't quite know how to do that dance yet, who comes in and really might disrupt that progress. There could be some gatekeeping there too. I've seen that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, hey, let's loop you in where you're ready. And then let make sure we're carrying those voices along the way. But there is, I think, a little bit of in the advocacy space gatekeeping for ourselves. Again, back to that second bucket of do I matter? Should I say something? Nobody's going to listen to me. All those things that I believe for a really long time. And I also think what's really brilliant, and I know this isn't quite answering your question, I'm rabbit holing a little here, but
It's okay.
precious, most powerful tool I think we have as early educators is we're really good storytellers. And so the data is crazy important. Do not go in without the data. But to your point, you remember the chair, the water bottle, you remember these images, and that imagery and that storytelling is some of the most powerful stuff. And if you can go in and tell stories about, hey, my dad did X, Y, and Z, and look at me, I'm here now, and this is what happened to me, and this is what changed me, and then you give them hope for another generation. That imagery sticks with them sometimes more than the data, even though the data sticks too. And so I think the gatekeeping of ourselves, that's probably the more detrimental gatekeeping is the one where we say our stories don't matter and our stories are the most powerful thing. And not only are they powerful, but they're even more powerful because we're really good storytellers in early education. And so I think, yes, there is gatekeeping at times just by the nature of politics and who's in power and what's going on. I mean, I think that happens everywhere in every situation, even within companies.
Mhm.
But I think there's our own gatekeeping, yes. And then I think that there's also but I also think that there is a huge space for us. It's just we've never
Yeah.
had such a big momentum that we have now. So I think there's definitely starting to be a really solidified space for our advocacy now.
I mean, I love that perspective, the perspective of storytelling. I've become a huge data nerd, right? Because, and I think I became a huge data nerd because I wasn't able to figure out what the story was that I was trying to get to. And so numbers automatically come naturally to me. And so that was my way of saying, hey, this is why we need to do what we're doing. And I got really involved in more the data than the storytelling, but your perspective about storytelling is spot on. Spot on. That's definitely something. So, what would you want every Floridian to know about the state of children's well-being being in Florida?
Oh gosh, we're gonna need more than 30 minutes for that, Aruna. You know, we have an entire world of possibility, and it's so hard to look in the reality of the things that we face now. And we hear the outcries of people and the passions of people and I wish this wasn't happening. I wish this was happening. And at the heart of it, we have this entire realm of possibility for changing that future, and it's rooted in us. And I am the queen of metaphors, and I know that about myself. But again, early educator, we're storytellers. I keep thinking about, at the core of everything we want, it's all rooted in early education and the brain development and the experiences of a child. And that's not new information, but we just have to get the word out there a little bit more. And I think too, we have to change how we talk. Last week, I was people were laughing at me because I kept saying somebody said something about, oh, well, then when we shift to academic skills, and I was like, it's all academic. It's like saying that one-on-one correspondence in an infant classroom isn't academic is like saying 1+1 doesn't matter in algebra. Like it's all academic. It's all part of the journey of building the brain and building the learner. But for some reason, we've compartmentalized this age as not being academic. And I know that we don't want direct instruction in our field and we want to make sure it stays play-based 100%. But I think we've got to learn that this realm of possibility is so much bigger than we can even imagine. And we need to talk about it in that way so that the world sees that literally everything that we want to change and everything that is troubling us as a world, if we could get in there and get it on the front end, solving, a brainstem being developed in an infant classroom, and then all of a sudden that kid who was going to grow up to be somebody incredibly violent now feels safe and can regulate their emotions. Problem solved. And not saying that that won't need extensive work along the way if the child continues to be exposed to those kinds of trauma. But if we could get that brain structure right in our space, academics is the last thing we're worried about at that point because that's going to be a breeze. So, when we think about early learning, to me, But, we've always said you wouldn't build a house without a foundation. I mean, we hear that kind of stuff all the time, but genuinely at its core, we've got to start thinking about the learner as soon, I mean, honestly, in the womb, if we go all the way back in the science, but really for us, what we can do something about one-on-one with a child from the moment they're born. And if we can tap into that possibility, everything else will start to flow out from that. And so, that would be my thing is we have a lot of untapped possibility if we would just refocus a little bit on trying to think about the core structures of the brain instead of just the prefrontal cortex.
Mhm. So if I
Not
give you a magic wand, Erin, and I have the power to do so apparently, but if I give you a magic wand, what would you do? What would you change? So, the magic wand question, right, is that I waved my magic wand and you went to sleep. You have no idea that I have fixed all your problems. You wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that'll tell you? Wow, something's changed.
we'd have every parent walk into every classroom and think, wow, it's amazing in here. And we
Mhm.
don't have that right now. We have parents crying in parking lots. We have teachers quitting left and right. Some of our best teachers leave our field on the regular for $1 an hour. You can't always get that magical moment in the classroom that you can. It's really hard to train that, but you know that you can train it. And you also know that there are just people who really are in this for the right reasons. But you would have every parent walk into every classroom and think, wow, this is amazing. And every child would feel the same way too. That would be, I think, a detector of it.
Yeah.
Now, the measurements obviously we could do on the back end of which tools we use and all of that, but there should never be a moment where a parent or a child doesn't feel safe in a classroom or a
Yeah.
teacher. There are a lot of teachers who don't feel that as well because we have some amazing, amazing teachers, and probably some of the best teachers in the nation are in our field. And we lose them because we don't have the infrastructure to support them unless they just, have some other resources in their life. But some of I would say if you really looked across the nation and tried to find the best teacher, it probably lives in early education.
Yeah. So, as a CEO of the forum, right? Like, I know personally the impact you've had on me, on early learning, on so many people who have entered this field, left the field, and came back to the field. And you say Erin Smeltzer, and you need no introduction, right? And that's an amazing feat. But as the CEO of the forum, how do you measure your impact or the impact of the agency?
It's funny I said data and stories because that's literally how we measure it. We have tons of really good data. In some of our programs that look at the workforce, we look at that retention rate and that turnover rate, and we make sure that that's really making a huge impact. That's one of my favorite stories to tell that we look at a 30 to 40% turnover, and in our programs at the forum, the lowest we've seen so far is 6%, the highest is 10. I mean, incredible numbers. And that's fantastic 'cause that's what we want to see. But the stories of I was a single mom and I wanted to go to school and I didn't want to leave the field. And so this helped me get what I needed to stay in the field without getting too much, financial burden. And now I'm able to stay and do the thing I love. Probably solidly one of those really great teachers that we're
Yeah.
looking for in the world. And then we have families that help me grow, same stories. We see screening data, accessing resources, how many follow-ups we did, how many appointments we got made. But then we have the parent stories of I had a child who had a special need and I didn't know what to do. And they helped me get to where I needed to go. My child's thriving. Like the stories and the data are what we watch constantly. And the team, they hear me say this at every staff meeting. I am so grateful to get to be on their team because that team they are in it for the right reasons. And when I tell you, we have a team of people who will move on a dime if there's a baby at stake. And it doesn't matter if it's our comms team, our IT team, our program team, it doesn't matter. We have an entire building of people who believe in this mission. And to me, watching that as an organization is one of the best detectors because even if the numbers in the stores aren't getting to me, I see their heart. And people who work like that and work at that high capacity with that kind of mission and passion. I mean, there's no way not to produce results at
Yeah.
that. So, we measure the data and the stories, and then we just measure to make sure we've got the right people in the right spots. And man, we're blessed with some really great people at the forum.
Absolutely. So what's next for you? What's next? What's happening at the forum next? What's happening with you?
Yeah. So, it's funny, I mentioned Arkansas. We got to spend some time with them, and man, Arkansas is an incredible team as well. But it was incredible to sit and talk to them and learn so many cool things from them on how we measure brain functioning and some of the cool projects they've done. But it was also really nice to look back and say, man, look at everything, like you said, we've done in just 10 years in Florida. and be able to help them on their journey as well. And so, I think looking back on what we've done, where we are now is, we did a lot of quality work, and now we've done a lot of the, how do we pay for the services that we asked for with the quality? Okay, we've got that kind of looked at now. Still working out kinks with both of those. Those are not finished, but now I think we're shifting to the workforce. And I'm really excited about that space. I think our workforce deserves to have a system that supports them, that's understandable, that makes sense, that has currency across the nation if they leave Florida, that has currency across counties. And so I think that's the next shift is how do we work and create those structures? And then I would hope follow-up conversation would be compensation. How do we bring in, different ideas on how we help get solid structures to compensate our workforce? But I think before we get there, we've really got to think about how do we set up a really great professional development system that makes sense and that
Yeah.
is really relevant to what's making a difference in the lives of our teachers and children and families, and not necessarily where we've seen across the nation, some other states have struggled with box checking or just doing what we think we need to be done, but really building a system that was built by us. Those
Yeah.
of we've been in the field, we know what it looks like. We know the days that you want to quit your job. How do we make sure that this system meets you on those days and helps you keep growing without leaving our education system? And then also, how do we grow leadership in that? This is a big passion of mine. We need leaders in this space because a lot of our leaders leave us, or we have built leaders, but leaders that haven't been in the classroom or who have come, and man, we need those people too. People who've come from other spaces who have backgrounds and other things. They have really driven this field in a great direction. But we need more people too that are homegrown from the field. And so, how do we create a professional development system that grows not just the classroom teacher or the director, but the early interventionist, the state policy leader, people at the Division of Early Learning, people at the ELCs? How do we grow more of that across the state so we have a really great leadership capacity and we catch them before they leave us and then also grow them into who they want to be in the field? We just need more people who can say, yeah, I know what that feels like. And we have a lot of those, but I don't think it would hurt for us to grow more.
Yeah, I was looking at the statistic the other day where they were talking about over 250,000 women have left the workforce, but 189,000 men entered the workforce. And I started to think about how much the system we're in early learning is powered by women. And so more and more, if we see those women leaving the workforce, we ought to figure out why, right? And one of the things that struck me, probably because I'm old, but one of the things that struck me is that
Say, Maruna.
not quite. But one of the things that struck me is that the infrastructure of how we look at learning and working has changed. And so when I was thinking about that, I'm back to school now and everything is different. Everything is different from how when I learned 20 years ago when I did my master's, right? And I started thinking about all the things that I didn't know and how are we preparing our children to enter that new infrastructure of this world of work, right? And wondered how could you put that piece with when you're looking at professional development for teachers, looking at it from the perspective of we're teaching a generation things that we will never know. So how do you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. Well, back to the women question, like that being kind of an isolated place. One of the things I love about Teach is, yes, we pay for the scholarships and things like that, but there are a lot of incentives along the way that help take down barriers that I think typically hit the women more than men. I'm not that we don't have a ton of dad caregivers because we absolutely do. In our field, though, it's probably primary mom caregivers who are trying to make this, or moms that are in the space trying to also be a teacher and be a mom. And so I think that's what we've had our head down on Teach with is what else is a barrier? What else is keeping a mom who might be juggling two kids, trying to go to school, trying to work in a preschool, also trying to just live and take showers? How do we break down those barriers? And so we've been able to really think through how we do our stipends, how we do our payments to try to help alleviate some of that. But Runa, I don't know if there is a question on, I mean, I don't know if there is a true answer on how do we, make this easier for women in the workforce, or, our workforce in general is just so they're so demanded upon there. I remember my director telling me, I remember teaching 1-year-olds, and I said, I will never teach 1-year-olds ever again because that was the hardest age for me because they couldn't talk to me. And she said, if you go home at the end of the day and you feel exhausted, you did your job well. And it's true. I mean, if you put your whole heart and effort into it, when you get home, you need like 30 minutes for people to just not need you. But asking somebody to do that every single day is a lot without the appropriate supports. And so I think we're still at that, just the workforce in general. I think we can isolate it down to moms and women and the different struggles that we see. I think we also could recruit more men into our field and do some incredible work as well. I think that's another area we need to look at just because I think that does brings different things in. But from a workforce as a whole, I think we're still baby stepping into, which is why I say I think that's got to be our next priority. We need just basic workforce infrastructure built, and we haven't gotten there yet. Besides our teach and some of our incentives programs and compensation strategies happening around the state, we've had such a great focus on children and families because that's where it should be first. But I think it's time for us to shift to our workforce. And then once we've gotten some of that built, then I think we get to get into those like really nitty-gritty areas we're in and say, okay, how do we recruit this specific kind of person? And how do we make sure that we don't have barriers? But in the meantime, Teach is helping with those barriers. And then as we move forward in the next few years, I hope our PD system looks like something we can build cool things like that on top of.
Yeah. So, they say that a child's world is shaped by their experiences. And I want you to know that my career has been shaped by watching you do this job with such integrity and such love and such compassion for people. But also, Erin Smeltzer, you're the epitome of what we need for early learning. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for spending all of these years with us and doing all of this, this hard work, because it's been hard work. And we certainly appreciate everything you're doing. And we're looking forward to seeing all of the stuff with professional development at the forum. That's going to be amazing and hoping to be part of that. So definitely being part of that structure with you. So I thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are, and I so appreciate the time any last words you want to say?
Well, one, Aruna, when I think about my team of people, when I look across at who I would call, you are right up there. So right back at you. My heart is full and I'm so honored to have gotten to do this journey with you, but that is such mutual emotion between the two of us. I usually say Aruna is such a gift is usually what I say when I talk about you.
Not everybody would say I'm a gift.
Listen, same.
I can send you people.
Listen, yes, I have the same. But I think, for us, that's what it takes is just like-minded people who are willing to get in the dirt and get it done. And you are so one of those people. So I just want you to hear that back. I know you don't hear that enough from me. So yes, thank you for being in my journey with me too, because you saw that 30-year-old who got handed a state project and was like, Aruna, I don't know what this means, I don't know what these words are.
But look at what you did.
So thank you for being you. We are definitely such a huge team in Florida, and we are so lucky to have the people we have in Florida. We're going to do great things. I can't wait till the 20-year mark to look back.
Me too. Me too. Well, you have a great day. Enjoy Washington, D.C., my favorite city. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.